There's only 24 hours in a day. I got a pair of earbuds and I wish there was a way that I could know just what I want to listen to. There's 150,000 shows that I'm not sitting through. When the world is dark and boring, let us do your exploring. Pod on pod. Pod on pod.
Welcome to Pod on Pod, a guide to the world of podcasts because it's not your daddy's radio. We're your hosts.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Joel. This week on Pod on Pod, it's going to be a little bit different episode. We've been teasing you for a couple of weeks now, but it's finally time. We're going to be talking about Gotham as, well, it's not Gotham City, it's just Gotham. The TV show Gotham. It's premiering this fall on Fox. As a matter of fact, at the end of this month, September 22nd, I think is the release date.
Release date.
Starring, among other people, Donald Logue. That's the only name that I really recognize. The guy who playing Harvey Bullock. He's from Sons of Anarchy, been in a couple of other things.
Fish is Jada Pinkett Smith.
Oh, good call. I'd forgotten about her. Yeah. Jada Pinkett Smith, Will Smith's wife, and Jaden Pinkett Smith's mother. He's not Pinkett, I guess, probably. She's going to be playing the heavy, the mobster in this show. But it's a show that Josh and I are excited about. We know a lot of you are probably excited about it too. And so we thought, why not try to find the best companion podcast that's out there for you guys to check out while you're watching the show this fall. So, unlike a normal episode where we break down an individual podcast with 4 categories: audio quality, host likability, production values, and then the content itself, why don't we talk about the 4 different podcasts that we're going to discuss, and then we'll run through the categories briefly on each of them. We each listened to 3 different podcasts.
2 of them ended up being the same, and we each brought a different one to the table.
There are a lot out there. If you search iTunes or Stitcher or however you get your podcasts, there are already several Gotham podcasts that are specific to the TV show. There's even more, as you mentioned last week, there's even more just general Batman podcasts.
A ton.
And imagine that. Lots of geeks like Batman. Who knew? But the shows that we're going to talk about this week are as follows. Before the Bat, we're going to talk about Gotham City Podcast, Gotham TV Podcast, and then we're also going to be talking about The Legends of Gotham. 4 cool shows. Where do you want to start, Josh? Why don't we go ahead and get Before the Bat off the top?
Oh, all right.
You don't want to do you want to bury that one? I just thought we'd go ahead and get that bitter taste out of our mouth.
All right.
Well, let's pull the Band-Aid off. One of the shows that I checked out was called Before the Bat. Now, you actually listened to this one as well. You've got 2 co-hosts for the show now. When I was listening to the show, it was just the one guy. But Phil is your main host, and then he's been joined now by a girl named Kelly.
That has to be a recent development.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I don't think they've even actually recorded a whole episode together. This is from a network called the Southgate Media Group. You can find them at southgatemediagroup.com, and you can find Before the Bat podcast on Facebook, facebook.com/Before the Bat podcast. I don't know that you're going to want to, though. Let's go ahead and talk about it. The biggest problem with Before the Bat, in my opinion, is the audio quality.
My biggest problem with Before the Bat is the host.
You're talking about Phil there. We had not listened to an episode with Kelly along for the ride, so perhaps the show is drastically
can't be saved. Cannot be saved.
I tend to agree with you. I don't think that it can be.
But every podcast needs a villain, and that's Before the Bat.
That's right. Before the Bat is the villain of this podcast. My question is, what the heck is Phil recording with?
I don't have a clue. And then my thought is, whoever runs Southgate Media Group, are they listening to the product that they're putting out?
Well, it makes me wonder exactly how many podcasts they have. And I guess that...
Oh, a ton. This podcast bothered me so much that I went and looked at it, and they have a bunch of pop culture podcasts. They do several shows. One from Once Upon a Time. Pretty much every show out there, they have a podcast for.
Yeah, I'm up to 40 shows now, and that's not all of them.
They have a ton.
That's insane. But it makes me wonder, though, how good can they all be? Obviously, they're not all manned by the same people. They've got a large staff, I'm sure, that are working on these different shows.
You read their mission statement and what they're trying to put out there, and it's noble and it's admirable, and I applaud them. I haven't listened to any of their other podcasts, but this one is just terrible.
Yeah. So audio quality is the first place here that I want to talk about. And Phil, he must be recording with his I don't know, his laptop mic, I guess,
Has
whatever's
to be.
built into the computer or something. The sound was terrible, and it's not even consistent. It was different kinds of terrible. Now there's a buzz. Now it's just generally fuzzy. Now he's too hot. Now he's too
Right.
cold. It was
Right.
all over the place. The other thing about this show was the first episode was released on July 1st, and Phil knew absolutely nothing about the show at that point.
Well, I think it was more of I think his intro show was more him trying to get a host. I don't think he knew what he wanted to do. I don't think he knew a format for the show, for his podcast. He didn't have a structure. I still don't think he has a structure.
Of course, this is a show that hasn't even premiered yet, so you may be thinking, well, what does that matter? Because the episodes that he does about the actual TV show is what you're going to want to be listening to.
But other podcasts figure that out.
Exactly. And the other thing I think is this, the old adage, I think Abraham Lincoln was supposedly responsible for this quote, it's better to be thought a fool than open your mouth and be proven. I think that's kind of what happened here. Like, it's better to not put out an episode. If you've got an idea for a podcast, wait. Let it gestate. Let it stew, let it ferment, let it become a thing. Have an idea, have a plan of action, and have at least some idea of the script for your particular episode before you record that first one.
If you could describe this podcast in one word, I would use the word desperate.
He did sound, in particular on the second episode, he sounded desperate. He opens the second episode talking about how there's been no feedback.
Right.
Well, the first episode didn't inspire any feedback, Phil. And to batter your audience with pleas for feedback, I say this as a guy who's gotten very little feedback on his podcast in the past myself. Asking for it is not the way to get it. The way to get it is to consistently produce good content and then to go and put it in front of people's eyes. You have to be out there as a self-promoter if you want to get your podcast seen and heard. I have no problem with promoting a show. But on the show, just give me the content. Don't talk to me about how you want me to interact with the community so much.
In his defense, I believe this is his first podcast that he's anchoring. He's done some co-hosting on other shows here or there, but this is his first one. So he is trying to figure it out. He's just not doing a very good job of it.
We talked a little bit about audio quality there, the host likability. I don't think Phil's a terrible guy, but he's not terribly likable either, or at least the way he presents himself. There's nothing in his delivery or his mannerisms that says, what a swell guy. At least let me find another podcast where he's a co-host and maybe there's better content or something.
Right. Like
I don't
he
want to
needs a Pat
chase more.
Summerall.
Well, maybe, but I don't even want to chase down the potential for a great show with Phil on it. He didn't inspire that in me. What about the production values there? They were very little to speak of.
The music's
It's in, it's out. It's not terrible, but when you go to the voice and the voice is worse than whatever production values you have, what you need is a new mic. That's the answer there, and I think that's all I want. I don't want to bash on him too badly.
I would put money that this podcast doesn't make it this season. I
don't know. I think that's a pretty good bet, probably.
Like, he has a ton of enthusiasm, which is great, but I don't know if that enthusiasm is going to carry him through an entire season, seeing how he seems kind of down on it in the second and third episode about not getting feedback, not getting a co-host to write in.
Yeah.
And I think that if he goes too much longer without getting some positive support or some feedback at all, I don't think he's going to finish the season.
I think that's a fair enough. Case. Sometimes you get burnt out if you're not getting any response, if you're not getting any approval.
Creativity needs fuel.
Exactly, absolutely. So good on you, Phil. Nice try. Not our favorite, and we'll be moving on to the next in the list. That was Before the Bat. You can find more Facebook.com/Before the Bat podcast. Why don't we move to your individual show?
All right.
The Legends of Gotham.
Or just Legends of Gotham.
My bad, yes.
The hosts are Bill, I believe his last name is Meeks. I could be wrong on that. And his co-host, a female co-host, which is pretty fantastic, Anne-Marie DeSimone.
Yes, and you got both the names right. Look at that. I got the website pulled up here. You can find these guys at legendsofgotham.com.
They have another podcast that they do on Once Upon a Time called Welcome to Storybrooke, so they have some chemistry here. What I like in particularly about this podcast is if you don't know a whole lot about Batman or Gotham or any comic books and the TV show is something that you're just now getting into and are being introduced to it, this is probably going to be a pretty good podcast because Bill knows quite a lot about Batman and about Gotham. He tends to be a comic book aficionado. And the good thing about having Anne-Marie is she'll be able to ask questions like a new viewer would. She does bring a background by she loves police procedurals.
Oh, no, that's a cool angle on it. Yeah.
Right. So you're going to get two different angles. They're going to cover it that way. Audio-wise, it's pretty clean. They've obviously done this before. Bill runs the show, leads the show, and then Anne-Marie is able to chime in with her thoughts on what he says and then bring her own outlook to it. So overall, it's a pretty solid show. If you are already super familiar with Batman, if you're already super familiar with that world, it might not be the best out of this bunch for you. If you're new, it's a pretty good place to start.
That's awesome. That's Legends of Gotham. Again, you can find them at legendsofgotham.com. What did you think about their production values?
It's straightforward. It's completely conversational.
They don't do that intro, outro music at least?
That's it.
Well,
Yep.
that's all you need. Are they part of a network that you're aware of?
Not that I.
Yeah, I can't find
not
any.
That they mentioned.
They don't have any links on their website for a network. They do have links for the Once Upon a Time podcast,
Right.
and I think they're each of their individual websites. But other than that, it's just stuff about Gotham. Pretty cool. I haven't listened to this one myself.
And
I'm
they
looking
already
forward
have
to it.
several episodes out. The first one they did was on April 30th.
Interesting. They go through the last thing that I see here on the website is they've got a episode 4 was
Yep.
about the 20-minute special that was
Right.
just released. I haven't watched that yet. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it either. But what's great is I've been able to listen to a couple of podcasts talk about it. So it'll be fun listening to them and then actually watching it.
That's pretty cool. And what about the content itself? They kind of fill you in from both angles. You feel like it's pretty solid week to week?
Yeah, I think it's for, out of the 3 that I did, I was debating on what was going to be my favorite. I couldn't really pick that. So again, if you are being introduced to this world through the TV show, I'm going to recommend this one.
Yeah, well, having the outside eyes, like somebody who's not heavily steeped in Batman lore, is probably a good way to get that.
And seeing how it has a female host, I mean, getting your girlfriend or wife to listen to it will probably be a little easier.
Probably be easier. You're right. And it's very different from any of the other shows that we're going to be discussing today. Now, you listen to Gotham City podcast or Gotham TV?
Gotham TV.
Okay, excellent. So let me talk about Gotham City podcast for a minute. The Gotham City podcast, you can find that at gothamcitypodcast.com. The show is hosted by Ian, and he does not have his last name here on the website, but he's a veteran podcaster. He's been doing podcasts for several years now. He's been involved with podcasts about video games, comic books. He's currently on one about Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., cloud computing even, as well as craft beer. So this guy has got a broad range of interests. He's also from the UK. I think probably Irish, but I wouldn't swear to it. He didn't say it in any of the episodes that I listened to, and
That's interesting.
Can't always pick which UK accent it is.
That's pretty interesting because Gotham TV is actually 2 Irish guys, and I've listened to several interviews with Grant Morrison,
Who is also Irish.
Scottish, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
I believe he's Scottish. But in it, he talks about how ingrained American comic books and stuff are in the UK.
Well, I knew there was a big comic book following there, and they've even got a lot of their own. For instance, Judge Dredd. The whole idea of Judge Dredd and that character is just from the UK. Like that is a UK creation that has been transplanted over here, and they've got some others. Batman in particular has some really cool characters that exist in Great Britain and in and around the UK. There's a Batman analog. I can't remember what his name is right now, but there's a British Batman, effectively, or a UK Batman that he occasionally meets in the comics. I liked this show a lot. Ian was a great host. The interesting thing was that it was only one host, and it's so rare of all of the shows that I listen to have a solo show. There are a couple, but it's so rare. Every time I get to one, it's a little jarring that there's not a second voice.
Well, how's the accent? Was it easy to listen to?
It's one of those things that I found. I've actually spent a lot of time listening to another podcast this past week. I just found this show called The Weekly Planet, which is also a comic book podcast from two Australians. And the guys' accents are both pretty thick, in my opinion, again, coming from someone with a different accent. But what I found is while the first episode I might have had issues listening, once you get the hang of it, like you kind of fall into their patterns, and it's very, very easy to take in all of the information.
So with it being a solo host podcast, how's the length on it? I mean, is it 20 minutes? Is it an hour?
He's had 3 episodes so far, and 22 minutes, 30 minutes, most of them have been. I'm assuming that they'll probably get longer once we get to the season. Like he may even have close to an hour episodes when you've got an hour worth of TV to talk about every week. But in the first 3 episodes, he had, 20-minute, 30-minute episodes. The first episode in particular, he just talked about the news of the show, set up his podcast and what he's going to want to do week to week. And then he gave a little bit of general background. Here's what we know about the show so far, and here's why this is relevant to Batman history. He does a great job of introducing you to those concepts. He is very steeped in it, and so am I. So it was hard for me to see where he might have been leaving the beginner behind.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right.
And so that's where your show, The Legends of Gotham, is going to come into play. I think if you already know Batman, that show may at times frustrate you.
Right.
Somebody like Ian who gets Batman 2, I don't think I never felt, okay, I get
behind.
that, go on. Yeah.
Right.
I never felt left behind, but also I never felt like I was waiting for the class to catch up with me, which is a good thing to have. The biggest thing that I love about this podcast in particular, the last episode that they did was no news, just speculation. And for 22 minutes, Ian just talked about the directions he imagines this story going in. And it was really, really interesting because he was talking about the things that the other comic book companies have done in movies and TV recently, and how Gotham in particular has some advantages and disadvantages as it relates to those other shows and what they've done. In particular, not having your main character suit up ever in the show, that's going to be a big deal, I think. And it's going to be very interesting to see how they can maintain the tension and the excitement and the comic book-ish nature of it.
Right, but you also have ingrained in our culture now are the CISs, the SHIELD, all those cop shows, which is going to bring that fan base to it. And then it's also going to bring the comic book fans to it who may not be used to that style, who it's popular, so they're going to end up hopefully growing to love it.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Here's my question. His speculation, because I heard this on several podcasts.
Okay.
People are predicting that Jada Pinkett, this is going to be her only season.
I don't think that's the case.
Several people. Well, why else would you bring a made-up character in the plethora, the cornucopia of villains that Batman has? You can't kill any of the other ones off. You can't.
But you can.
You can kill her.
You're right. So why waste it in the first season would be my argument. If you watch the promo and the trailers, the lines that she has in particular, there's several that seem to intimate that she's not in charge yet, that she is a figure in the underworld, but not the figure in the underworld. And I think what you might see over the course of the first season is Gotham in chaos with lots of mob warfare. The
Penguin's going to end up killing her.
Oh, I agree.
You can't have two aquatic names.
Well, not only that, but
show.
penguins eat fish.
Yeah.
That's
going to happen.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. But and Ian, I don't think he said anything specifically about her leaving in the first season. I don't remember any of that. And I also don't think she's going to. I think probably what you do is you set her up as an amazing villain in the first season, and then at the end of the second season, the Penguin ascends to his own. And here's the other thing too: how long a game is this?
7 years, I'm saying.
That's a long show to have no Batman. It's a long show. This show is going to be about the denigration and the devolution of Gotham. How it gets worse, how it's already bad, and it gets worse and worse and worse,
Sure.
and demands that this guy stand up and put on a cape and a cowl. I think it's going to be hard to watch that eventually. Like,
So you're saying he does a very Ian
yes.
does a great job of theorizing all this.
yeah, absolutely. And there is some really good speculation in that episode. That was my favorite of the three of his that I listened to. Let's talk a little bit about the different parts of his show. We talk about audio quality, host likability, and production values and content itself. The audio, it's not terrible. It's very consistent. It also shows how easily Before the Bat could fix their biggest problem. This guy does not have a full professional setup. It's clear. He's using probably a USB mic straight into his computer. But it's an actual microphone. He's quieted the room, and then he is doing some sort of processing with the audio after the fact. You can do all of that without much hassle and without spending much money. He does it the right way. Before the Bat did it the wrong way. As far as host likability, I really liked Ian. Maybe I've got a thing. Maybe I'm an Anglophile a little bit. I like accents, and in particular, I like accents from the UK, Irish, Scottish, British. It doesn't matter. All of them I find very
Pleasing.
endearing. Yeah, it's pleasing.
Lyrical.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
It's got a lilt to it. Exactly. And so I enjoyed that. He's a nice guy. He and I have a lot in common as far as where he comes from with his comic book knowledge and everything.
Are you sending him a Valentine?
No, I just wanted to say I like the show, and I
Okay.
enjoyed him quite a lot. Production values, hey, he's in and out. It's a little bit of theme music, just enough to know, hey, we're starting a show now, and then he's done with the music and he's on to his show. So I enjoyed that a lot. And as I already said, the content is solid there too. Different from Legends of Gotham, perhaps if you're not already a Batman insider, this isn't the one to plug you into the world in the best way. He's going to have a depth of knowledge about all the different characters. As we introduce the Penguin, he'll likely have a whole episode where we talk about the history of the Penguin or something. And that's cool, but maybe not for everybody. That takes us to another show that we both listen to.
Yes.
Gotham City Podcast.
Gotham TV.
I'm sorry, Gotham TV Podcast. Yes, the Gotham TV Podcast. You can find them at gothamtvpodcast.com. And this is hosted by two guys, Derek and John.
That's right.
What did you think about this show, Josh?
I enjoyed it. Again, I think that this is a show for people who already know the mythos, because they have how many episodes do they have out now? 19? 17?
Yeah, something like that. They've been going for a long time. From the
Since
very
March. Since
from
March
the very
3rd.
beginning. As soon as this show was announced, they came out with an episode.
And this one also was the most structured of the shows that we listen to. Like, they have a bit of news, then they'll talk about a comic book where this character may come from. They may talk about Commissioner Gordon for a bit, all in the same episode. So you're getting a little bit of everything. And it also goes anywhere from, a 20-minute episode to a 2-hour-long episode.
And I think for a lot of their listeners, maybe they're not going to listen every week. Some of those, I'm going to come back and listen to that one at a later date. Their sort of preseason, if you want to talk about it like that, these shows leading up to the launch of the TV show itself have been really, really cool. I haven't listened to all of them, but I listened to a bunch. They started it off by just kind of setting up their show, what we're going to do, what the TV show is going to be about maybe, and what our show is going to be about specifically. Then they had an episode all about the cast and the characters themselves. They talked about Batman Year One, the recent direct-to-DVD movie that came out, which was great and has a lot of things in common with this show. And then my favorite part is they've been reviewing the comic book series Gotham Central. This is what a lot of people think is going to be like the main base of storylines for this show itself. Gotham Central is all about the police of Gotham City. Now, Batman is in this comic book occasionally. This is a set in Gotham while Batman is active, but it focuses on Jim Gordon and a lot of the regular beat cops, not just the commissioner and the top brass at the department, but your average cop in a city with costume vigilantes and villains. The comic book series is great, and their discussion of it is really good. Not everybody is going to have time or the interest to go through and read all of these comics, and they're kind of hard to find sometimes anyway. But listening to the storylines, hearing them discuss it, can kind of fill you in and give you a nice background. The other thing they did is they reviewed all 3 of the Christopher Nolan films.
Yeah, they did. I also enjoyed their predictions of who was the next character was going to be released to be on the show.
I got to tell you,
which actor was going to play the character, because I'll tell you what, Gotham has done a fantastic job of marketing this so far.
They really have. It's been a lot of places, and I don't feel like it's been like shoved down your throat. Like Well, when the new Avengers comes out, for instance, if you watch any TV or if you see any billboards or if you go on the internet, you will see trailers for that. I don't feel like I've been bombarded with promotion for Gotham being on, but it does seem like there's a tremendous amount of buzz for it.
Yeah.
A lot of people are excited. And so are we. Rightfully so. It's going to be a lot of fun, I think. So the Gotham TV podcast, hosted by Derek and John, what about the audio quality, do you think, sir?
It was good. It was solid.
Yeah,
I had no complaints.
And again, these guys are probably not in a full professional studio or anything. It's USB mics. It's a USB mixer. It's recording to a computer. But it shows you that you don't have to break the bank and you don't have to be, I don't know, some professional audio geek to be able to do a podcast that sounds nice. That's my opinion on it. What about host likability? Derek and John.
They're enjoyable. They're positive people.
They are very positive, aren't they?
They are. Both of them. They don't
and
get
excited about Batman.
Yes, very. My only negative toward the show is for somebody who isn't living in the UK. A lot of the news, or some of the news, is very geographical. Like here, the show is coming on Fox, and I know which station has that.
Right.
Over there, it's going to be Channel 5, which apparently is a smaller channel. It's not as popular as, say, Channel 4, but they were surprised that Channel 5, it was a great coup for Channel 5, so huzzah for Channel 5.
This shows how little I know about British television, but I believe aren't they like they're all owned by the government,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
Okay, so that's why there's only a handful of channels. Yeah. Anyway, so that is the Gotham TV podcast. You can check them out again at gothamtvpodcast.com. You said it earlier. It's not like we're necessarily going to pick a favorite of these 4 shows. Obviously, there's one that is not like the others.
Yeah.
But of the 3 shows that we enjoyed,
there's a turd in the punch bowl.
Yeah, a little bit. Gotham TV podcast, Gotham City podcast, and Legends of Gotham. I think there's something for everybody. If you don't care for Derek or John, or if they go a little overboard with their explanations of everything, then maybe the Gotham City podcast with just Ian is right for you. By the way, I didn't mention it, but that's on the RED Podcast Network. If you're a newbie to this world, or if you're a lady, then perhaps you might want the folks from Legends of Gotham and be able to follow them. We're going to have links for all of these shows on our post. You can go to podonpod.com, click the episode, the Gotham episode, and then you can find links for each one of these podcasts to go out and find them on your own and sample them. We suggest you try them all.
And you know what? Tell us what you think.
Absolutely. We'd love to hear some feedback. Speaking of, and we mentioned this before, now at podonpod.com, on each individual episode, you can click on that episode and comment right there. You can feedback, tell us what you thought of our reviews, tell us what you thought of the podcast themselves, and definitely tell us if we helped you find your next favorite show. Got anything else to add, sir?
No, I think that's all nice and wrapped up.
Yeah,
Here's
I
a
think
good little
so.
package for you.
I cannot wait for this show to start. You tell me, how long do you think they wait until the Joker is released on the show?
Season 3.
Really? You go 2 seasons deep and then you bring him out in the 3rd? Do you
Of course, yeah.
tease him over the whole season?
Oh, I think he'll be there. I think he'll be a background man. I think there's such an opportunity for him to be a back, kind of like the Watcher, right? Like he's in a lot of episodes,
Right.
but you have to kind of look for him in the crowd. Like I think he'll be there. I think he's going to be there from almost the beginning. Then whenever the Penguin takes down Fish Mooney, there's a power struggle there. The Penguin thinks he's got it all sewed up, and then bam, he's coming out in season 3.
Let me say this. And it's not like I want the show to be ended preemptively or anything.
And then also think about it. You say 7 episodes or 7 seasons or 6 seasons is quite a long time. You got enough for 3 seasons right now.
Yeah.
You get a buzz, you get an excitement back into it. If in the 3rd season you bring the Joker out, then you got 3 or 4 more seasons.
I think here's the problem. The Joker is one side of a coin, and Batman's on the other side. Like and I got to tell you, a lot of comic book geeks have already said this. They don't like the idea of all of these villains finding themselves before the Bat. because there's an argument to be made, and in a lot of the comics, the idea is played up that the only
Batman
reason
creates these
the only reason all these
the average goon and thug can no longer thrive.
Exactly. And not only that, but like he escalated it. They brought knives and guns. He brought batarangs. So now they have to bring joy buzzers and whatever.
Hold on. Did you seriously
say that batarangs are above knives and guns?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, not okay, but he brought a Batmobile and a bat wing and a bat rocket and all the other things. You know, I like the idea that Batman is both the savior and the downfall of his own city. That Gotham would not be as plagued as it is, if he were not there protecting it. And I think some of that may be taken away if they go a long, long time without a grown-up Bruce Wayne coming back into play. But to me, if you bring in Joker, that's the straw. Like, you can have some Joker stories without Batman, but at some point I think once you bring in Joker, he needs to suit up. That's the way that I feel about it.
I don't agree.
So I'm hoping for like 4 or 5 of the best seasons of comic book storytelling ever. That's what I'm hoping for. A 4 or 5 season run, and then you put the costume back on that dude.
Fortunately for us, this is not a Gotham TV podcast.
Absolutely. You're right. We talk about podcasts here on Pod on Pod. That just shows you how excited we are about this show. We hope you are too, and we hope you enjoyed our reviews of a couple of Gotham podcasts. Again, find all the links at podonpod.com, and then tell us which one was your favorite. So next week on Pod on Pod, we're going to be reviewing one of Josh's favorite shows.
And I don't care.
Tell him Steve Dave. Tell Him Steve Dave is on the Smodcast network, and we'll be telling you all about that next week.
And it's the Smodco network.
What did I say?
Smodcast.
It's the same thing.
Smodcast is
a show. Smodco is a network. Look at that. All right, then. Until next week, I'm Joel.
And I'm Josh.
And this isn't the podcast you deserve, but it's been the podcast you need.
Are you wanting something funny? Are you wanting something smart? A show on astral projection or the history of art? Do you want to learn a language or how to play guitar? Just leave it up to Joel and Josh. Pod on pod. Pod on
Pod on Pod is a proud member of the Procast Network, a Procreate production. Procreate is a community of artists in film, music, the digital arts, and fine arts that helps connect and collaborate on projects. You can find out more at www.teamprocreate.com. Also, be sure to check out the Non-Content Podcast if you're a fan of gaming and or anime. The Pod on Pod theme song is written and performed by Adam Dale. Find his music in iTunes and more information about him on our website. Our musical guest this week is Humdrum.
I'm not looking at you. You're facing graves and you're staring at me. Till I take the flame, until I take the flame. I'm not looking at you. You're facing graves and you're staring at me. Till I take the flame, until I take the flame. I'm not looking at you. You're facing graves and you're staring at me. Till I take the flame, until I take the flame. I'm like, out of my mind. All of the time, I'm like, tripping with fear, filling me up to the eyes. So if you offer me mollies, I'd be like, no, never mind. I know I might enjoy it, but I just never tried. And you swear you're not a junkie, but you might expire. Because I'm kinda unlucky and I'm not all that you're kind. My psychic defenses are all electrical wire. But I'm not an aggressor because I'm too fucking tired. I'm not getting stressed out, I'm drawing up lines. Because all social boundaries are too hard to find. You're getting so mad because I'm not even trying. Last time it was your turn, but this time it's mine. Like a cameo, but you're feeling. You're staring back at me until I take the blame. And I'm staring back at you because I know it's a game. And everybody's involved, they just don't know the plan. And I'm like a cameo, but you're facing grave. And you're staring back at me until I take the blame. And it's disappointing, like really a shame. I call you a devil, but like what's in the name? fine, I'm just stuck in existential despair. I hide inside your mind, but I ain't gonna tell you where. And you'll scratch your head and think I'm putting you on, but I'm like this with everyone, so don't take it wrong. And when I speak, I don't bite my tongue. Rap game, you know I have one. Rampage, you know I'm on one. Neo-romantic, I do it for fun. And you're getting dramatic, what planet you from? Just get out your bits so you'll die before long, or you'll end up suffocating on the shit that you've done. We both have to come to terms with just what we've become.